Okay, it's 10 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and I'm calling to order this special meeting of the City Council Wednesday, July 1st, 2020 at 10 a.m. All council members are present, our city secretary is present, city administrator is present, and Marshall Dietrich is here as well. Item 2 is the regular agenda, discussion and possible action on the following items. Discussion and possible action to approve an ordinance extending the emergency order issued by Mayor Shaman regulating the total capacity for gatherings at the Bandera City Park. Y'all know I signed an emergency order on Friday that went into effect at 11:59 p.m., limiting the access to the park at a cap of 500 people. Your thoughts, council?
Yeah.
Don?
My thoughts are we close the park completely. San Antonio has another 1,000 people infected with this coronavirus, and it's 30 miles away, roughly 31 miles away from here. I believe that there would be a lot of people coming to our park if we don't close it, but we'll have to go public with it as far as the TV or the radio to get something. Well,
Could we get Marshall Dietrich to respond to that,
That's what
please?
I'd like to hear.
Yes.
As always, I'll support anything legal that the council goes for. I would say that it is problematic to close it all together. It's so much easier to control if we do have it open somewhat. It takes more manpower to actually close it down. But if that's what council wants to do, that's what we'll make happen. I mean, I certainly see the logic of closing it down with what's going on. It makes sense, but just know that it is problematic to close it all together. Probably more manpower intensive.
Lynn had her hand up first.
Since the 500 max came into effect last weekend, can you report to us how that was, how that proceeded, and did we have any problems with cutting it off at the 500 max?
They hadn't brought any problems to my attention of it. They said that numbers were kind of down as far as I know. There hadn't been any issues with the 500 numbers, but my information is that the county has closed the county park now, so naturally we got a rise in air attendance when they upped the price at the county park. So I would expect that to correspond here, that since they closed it, we would expect a rise in attendance at our park for this weekend if it was open.
Jerry?
Do you have a feel for, or anybody that's up there enough, do you have a feel for the difference between 500 and 1,000 people?
It's kind of hard to say.
I've seen it at 500 this past weekend. So what I'm getting at there is it looks like it's almost empty. Is that correct? So plenty of spacing at 500 people. Is that?
Yeah, and I would say that 1,000 is probably not a huge difference, especially on 500 could be a weekday crowd, and 1,000 would be a pretty slow weekend day.
Do you want to let him finish?
Say my question.
If the council was to vote to leave it open, would it be possible or feasible to have an officer there every minute? That's stationed there.
I'm working on that now. Everybody was out of town, the extra help, so I'm working on getting an extra officer. One way or the other, we're going to have at least one extra one down there, so I'm working on that. Starting this morning, I was already working on that.
To actually stay there the whole time?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
My question is kind of a follow-up with Dawn's concern, and in terms of an influx of people from other more infected communities. Can we limit it to county and Bandera County residents? Is that too complicated?
I think that's too complicated. The charging more for out-of-county residents was probably the best option, and we were kind of following the county's lead, doing it that way. So I think that was a prudent move, but to just outright ban out-of-county residents, I think it's opening up kind of Pandora's box for problems.
And if you would look at what I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to say, I think that's a great idea of Rebecca's, just to allow county and city, but I also understand how that would be very difficult to enforce. But I think that would be a good answer to just allow our Bandera County to use our city park. But I also understand, like I said, the difficulty of enforcing that.
That would probably be the ideal solution. It just has lots of problems that go along with it.
What is our time frame, real quick? Do you have an end date to this proposal or to this ordinance, or not just yet?
I'm concerned with July 4th weekend.
Sure.
Right now. Jerry?
I agree with Rebecca on that. That was an idea that I had also. Is it possible, feasible to close just to the city and county? To me, and not knowing the logistics of it, it seems as easy as just asking for driver's license. And don't worry about if a couple of them are in the car that aren't from the county. I mean, otherwise you'd be really causing yourself a lot of work. But I like that idea.
I just wanted to ask Will a question. If we close, and of course it looks like it's not that way, but if we close the park 100%, just put signs up, park is closed due to the coronavirus, we're still gonna have a problem, aren't we, with keeping people out, because they'll be climbing over the fence and things.
Well, they'll be trying to, yes, sir.
We're gonna have to have officers there anyway, open or shut, so we might as well accept that fact.
Yes, sir. That's a foregone conclusion, yes, sir.
Yeah, I would still like to see it closed completely because of the seniors, which I am one here in town. But I understand the problem that we might not be able to.
Well, one of the things that I look at every day and that goes up on our website is our report from DSHS. And that's Department of State Health Services. And in relativity to Bexar County, we have 3 active cases right now in Bandera County. There are 7,474 in Bexar County. We have 3. Now, we've been open since active cases. So we've lived through Mardi Gras, we've lived through Memorial Weekend, here we come 4th of July, and still our numbers are incredibly low, and we are inundated by people each of these weekends, even our past weekends before holiday weekends, by people from out of the city and out of the county. So it's just information. And if you think of it too, the 45 acres from First Street to 173 is like 1 million square feet or something ridiculous like that. What was it?
Almost 1.1 million square feet.
Here.
Yeah, and that's why, to me, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to shut down. I've seen the past weekends where I think we've seen totals of 2,000 a day there, right? So what makes July 4th special in that fact? I mean, so next weekend after July 4th, we could be back to just the regular weekends that we've been having at 2,000 people. So it's just a temporary pause because we're going to go right back into it. I mean, and I'm not proposing this, but the only thing that would make sense to shut down that park is for it to remain shut down. And I'm not all for that. I want to make that clear, but that's the only thing where it would seem logical to me to even consider, just because it's July 4th.
Jay, what is your opinion of bringing the influx of people in town?
I think if it's limited to a capacity number, then I think we could be okay. I mean, you can't make anybody really do anything. We can tell them social distance, be aware of your surroundings. But, like the mayor said, our count is very low in this county. So I don't see a lot of people from the city going down there and intermingling with the people from wherever, San Antonio, Austin, or wherever they may be. So myself, believe that it can be done with a cap on the number of people that we allow in there without just packing them in like sardines.
I spoke with Anna, who is our new gate person, Monday, and she said they didn't reach 500 until late on Saturday afternoon, and there was around 100 on Sunday. I think there's an abundance of caution everywhere. She said at 500, it looked like very, very vacant. And she said her opinion was 750 to 1250. But I'm not even, I'm just throwing out her opinion as the gate person. And, you know, so it's up to you, council. And remember too, as of today, the fees have gone up. So we're out of county. And I think part of the influx that we're anticipating is due to the governor's action on Friday and our surrounding areas making changes, not necessarily closing, but closing some things, leaving some open. There's less options for a holiday weekend. But if you're gonna leave Fiesta Texas open, really? Just saying.
Yeah.
Jay?
One thing, I know Kerrville are leaving their parks open for the 4th of July. They did cancel their fireworks show, and I don't know about the Robert Earl Keen concert, but I do know that their parks are still open.
Lynn?
And I spoke to Kerrville Parks and Recreation as well, and they have canceled all of the events, but their parks are gonna stay open. And there's no capacity either. There's no capacity cap.
And Kirk County has 47 active cases right now, so, you know, it's.
And they're leaving it up to the businesses on the mask thing, but that's another subject.
Mary, I'm sorry.
My big worry is to close the state of the county park at Medina Lake. I heard all the boat ramps are closed on Medina Lake. The only ones that are still open are private owned. All the rivers are closed in New Braunfels and San Marcos. Canyon Lake is closed. So the people are gonna look for a place to go. And so they're gonna swarm us no matter what. They have already. So it's gonna be twice as bad now because they closed the rivers in New Braunfels and San Marcos. These people want water and a place to party.
Jerry?
That's why if we are gonna open, I think it's important that we do put a cap on it, a reasonable cap. I really feel that at 500 from what I've seen,
But we have,
it's like hardly anybody in there. Because you got so many of them that go to the two ends. And then I've seen it at 2,000. So 2,000, yeah, it gets pretty packed in there, no doubt. But you still have good distancing. I looked close enough that people aren't mingling like if they're going to a church gathering or something. These are families and individuals coming in, and they're not there to make friends typically. So I noticed good distancing in most cases throughout the park, even at the 2,000. Those groups that you would see are probably all part of the same group. So
Are we gonna try to enforce the groups at 10 people, or we're not gonna worry about that? Because isn't that the governor's order to no more than 10?
Household,
100.
you know,
Okay.
I don't know how you're gonna regulate any of this, guys, except to count in and count out.
The governor's statement, I believe, was for outdoor events, 100 people or less, but that was left up to the cities if they wanted to make it higher.
What concerns me, open, close, whatever we do, they're gonna come to Bandera. They're gonna be in our town. A lot of folks are. And of course, it will help, I suppose, some of the businesses. But in turn, there's a big chance that we're gonna get some infections out of it. So we've got to keep that in mind. Do we want to, you know, open doors up for our citizens, or do we want to close it and still fight the battle? But you agree with that, Will? Is it still going to happen?
I think there's going to be a great number of folks still come here, but they have been coming. We've had a lot more folks. We've had weekend crowds on weekdays in the park since the summer started. Sometimes even bigger than weekend crowds on the weekdays. And what we need to realize is that with the gates open, people drive into that park and their cars are in there. We have a lot more control of them if they've driven their cars in. They're a lot more agreeable because they know that their cars are inside the park. And if we have several thousand people show up, park outside, and walk into the park, there's 10 of us that work for the marshal's office. We can't, we're gonna be hard pressed to deal with several thousand people in there whose cars are outside the fence. Throwing them all out at one time, it's gonna be impossible. So, like I said, we have a lot more control. If they've paid money to get in there, the cars are in there. If they're not behaving, they're not doing what they need to be doing, they're violating city ordinance, we can throw them out much more easier. We can deal with them much easier if they paid to get in there and their vehicles are inside the park than if they parked all along First Street where we can tow their cars off, or if they parked somewhere else outside the park and just jumped over the fence. Like I said, if we've got several hundred or several thousand in there, we're not gonna be able to deal with it. It's just too many for us to deal with. We can't put them all in jail.
We do have cars towed though if they park, or we
If they park down there on First Street on the weekends when they charge and they're in violation of, because those are the ones that do the most damage, that jump the fence and don't pay, that leave the most trash. And that a couple of years ago, we found that was the best deterrent, was to tow the cars off instead of writing tickets. But that's just something to think about, that if they pay to get in, we have the most control over their actions once they're in there. Whereas if they just jump the fence and they're all in there, it's rough for us to control them.
But we do make the decisions. You guys have to enforce it, so.
Yes, sir.
we can-
I was just gonna say that I think this is a big decision for this council to make today, and we shouldn't make a decision lightly. I also want to make sure that the community knows that it has nothing to do with the revenue that it might bring into the city, that it really has nothing to do with that. It's just trying to deal with the situation that we know there's going to be outsiders coming in anyway. And so what is going to be the best way for us to control that? And I have had a chance to speak to a lot of the citizens in Bandera and a lot of the business owners in Bandera, and it's kind of equal on closing and not closing. They both, most of them said, God, that's a hard decision to make. That's pretty much what they said. So I want it clear that it's not about the revenue, because that has been on social media, that it's all about the economy and revenue, and that really has nothing to do with this decision today.
Further comment, council? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the ordinance, capping the city park capacity to 500 temporarily. I don't have an end date to include in the motion, so we'll just.
Jerry?
I'd like to request that you amend that motion
It
to,
needs to be seconded before.
oh,
Oh, I
I'm
second.
sorry, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
That's correct.
I'll second.
Okay,
I'm
Thank
open.
you.
I'm sorry.
Okay, discussion, Jerry.
I would request that you amend that to raise the capacity to 1,000, and given the flexibility to whoever's in charge of manning it down there, that if they get above whatever number, even 600, whatever it may be, and people aren't distancing well enough, or they just feel that we should cut down at that point, that they have the flexibility to lower that if they want, if they see it's full at 1,000 people or 800.
And I would hesitate to revise my motion in that manner, because I think that kind of discretion can be complicated to enforce. And I would rather have a firm number, and I don't mind going up a little bit. You mentioned that the gate attendant said even at 750, there's plenty of space, so I wouldn't mind maybe bumping up to 750. I'll revise my motion to 750 capacity.
Lynn?
Well, I don't know if that's
We
gonna
need
be
to, are you confirming that?
I'll second that, but I do want to add for that to be in effect for 30 days.
Sure.
For the month of July. 30 days.
Are we in the discussion period?
Yes, for discussion.
I would go for the 500, for a temporary trial. I would not, we're gonna go for 750 or 1,000. So I think we're extending ourselves. We recommended we go 500, so I would go.
So from what I understand, the motion sits at 750 for 30 days. Is that where we are?
I'll add the 30 days because that was not included.
Would you like to restate your motion?
to approve the ordinance extending the emergency order issued by Mayor Shuman, regulating the total occupancy for gatherings in Bandera City Park to 750 total for a 30-day period, starting effective today, July 1.
Lynn,
I second.
thank you. Okay, any further discussion about that? All in favor? Jerry, Lynn, Rebecca are in favor. Those opposed? Rosie and Don are opposed. The motion passes. Therefore, we will get that on the books. Motion to adjourn, folks.
Motion to adjourn.
Rebecca makes a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Rosie seconds. All in, well, discussion, all in favor? Thank you. 10:21.